It is the Royal Blue podcast, and we are live across YouTube and Facebook. And today we've got a bit of a podcast special. Today, Connor, we're going to debate, probably argue, and discuss the best of Everton's 2023. My name is Ian Croll, and I'm joined by Connor O'Neill. Connor, how are things?
All good. A little bit under the weather, I think, like everyone is at the minute. It's a bit cold, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's certainly a fright for more when you get up and it's very, very cold when you're coming in. Comes the office in the early hours, but no, very, very good. Obviously, looking forward to having a return this weekend.
Yeah, it feels like there's been a bit of a couple of days. Obviously, there has been a couple of days without a game, but bit of a break. Obviously, no weekend game because we played on the Thursday. But yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, going to be a tough game against Villa.
Be cold as well, probably.
It will be cold, but like you said, everyone's got a bit of a cold in the office, but I feel like I've got over my colds. I had my colds before Christmas and New Year, and I'm trying to stay away from everyone, the germs and stuff like that. But we've obviously digressed a little bit. So, yeah, Connor, so we're a little bit late to this because we've been so busy, but kind of just discuss Everton's 2023. Bit of a, up and down year, really, but we're going to discuss, best player, worst player or underperforming player, best match, those type of things, best goal. So yeah, I think it's like I say, we are a little bit late to it, but I think it's definitely worth doing. And if you're listening on Facebook, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube Live, then send in your questions or submit your opinion. Let us know if you agree with everything that we say.
They definitely won't.
They're probably not, but like I say, there's a couple of curveball questions in that, like say, best player, best match, worst match, surprise player of the season, and then we'll kind of finish after that with just to discuss the landmark moments of the year, which obviously, is a Frank Lampard sacking, a Sean Dyche appointment, surviving relegation, probably 777 Machiri, the points deduction as well. So there's plenty to get through. So like I say, submit your questions, submit your opinions in the comments section, and just let us know what you think. So Connor, let's go straight into it then. Everton's best player of 2023. You give your opinion, I'll give my opinion, and then we'll kind of debate it and discuss it and see if anyone agrees or disagrees.
I don't think anyone could really debate this because it's up to Corey by an absolute country mile.
Okay.
Just because when you think of when he started 2023, he was frozen out by Frank Lampard. We couldn't get a look in. Looked like he was going to leave the club. Looked like he was on his way. Had no future. And then obviously, Sean Dyche comes in, start of February, throws him straight in against Arsenal. And if I'm being brutally honest, didn't look back. And I think, you look at last season, his sending off against Tottenham nearly relegated us because our good form up until that point all of a sudden fell off a cliff when he missed them 3 matches, and we desperately missed them. He was back for the run-in, obviously scored the goal against Bournemouth on the last day of the season. And then this year again, he's been absolutely superb, hasn't he? Picked up from where he left off, as a goals to his game, important goals. And I think the biggest point of all is you look at the games, some of them games perhaps over Christmas were in January, but when you look at, since he's been out the side, since he picked up that knock against Burnley, certainly the Fulham game at Goodison in the Carabao Cup, Everton look a completely different team without him and a worse team. And I think that's the biggest compliment you can pay him, is that he is an absolute crucial cog to what Sean Dyche is trying to do with the football club.
I completely agree, to be honest. I think for the purpose of debate,
I don't think that we're going to agree for all this, just so people know. I don't think we're going to agree.
No,
all this.
I think we agree on this one. For the purpose of debate and podcast discussion, I knew you were going to go for the core end, and obviously knew you were going to go first on this one. I kind of wanted to go different, but I'm not going to go different because I just think it would be an injustice to the core. I think he was without a doubt being the best standout player for Everton this season. You've literally touched on everything. I think all I'll say is I just can't actually believe the turnaround.
Yeah,
from. Obviously, we're talking very early stages of 2023, where he's literally frozen out, and then he becomes practically the saviour of Everton Football Club, and then has gone on to be another level. And then to the point where he's missing from certain amounts of games towards the end of 2023, and it's shown that we've missed him, which has been, fantastic, but largely frustrating towards those games that we have missed them in. So it's absolutely Abdoulaye Doucouré, you could probably give him it just for the goal against Bournemouth, to be honest.
But there's been so much more, though, hasn't he, to his game over the course of the calendar year.
No, yeah. I think the goals is the main thing, because I think I've discussed this with Chris Beasley on a previous pod. I think we did the Abdoulaye Doucouré special a couple of weeks ago.
I mean, that sums up himself when you're getting a special podcast for yourself.
Well, yeah.
While you're still playing, that says it all, doesn't it?
No, exactly. But I think my expectations were quite high for Doucouré when he first originally came in under Ancelotti. And I don't think he delivered in the first couple of seasons. He's delivered now, and I think that's fair enough, and it's shown, without a doubt, Everton's best player of 2023. So yeah, we're in agreement on that one each, absolutely one each. So I don't want to say Everton's worst player on this one, because I think it would be too harsh. But I am going to say Everton's most disappointing player or underperforming player of 2023. Who are you going to go for?
See, I'm torn on this because I don't like digging people out, because I think it's a little bit harsh, isn't it?
It's not digging people out, Conor. We're allowed to have opinions.
But I think you can't look past Michael Keane.
Okay.
I think he's done really well in recent weeks. I think you've got to give him enormous credit for starters, and now he's bounced back, and some of the performances he's put in have been really good. But you think back towards when Sean Dyche come in, the 4-0 at Arsenal, the defeat to Villa at home, the 4-0 defeat away at home to Arsenal, the 4-0 defeat away at Villa when he was handed the start.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad individual performances, and I think, in the end, Leicester City away, of course, when Everton drew 2-2, it was another night where he didn't do himself any favours, and it was no surprise, was it really, that Everton kind of got themselves over the line when Yerry Mina replaced him in the starting lineup. So I don't think he's been Everton's worst player. I think that's probably the wrong tactic to give him, but I just think he struggled for large parts at crucial times, and I think he deserves credit for what he's done in recent weeks. Now he's bounced back, but I just don't think he's done enough throughout the course of the year to settle people's nerves and think, he could be a steady Eddie at the back. And
he was a player that Dyche obviously fancied at the beginning of the season, because he was partnered in Tarkowski, wasn't he? And then thankfully Dyche changed his mind, basically, because he knew it wasn't working, and Branthwaite's come in and has kind of been, a breath of fresh air. Is going to be a standout season.
He's become very quickly what people are telling us to be a £100 million player, hasn't he?
Linked with Real Madrid, apparently, this morning.
With Real Madrid, yeah. So, I mean, I think it was that kind of, the Villa game wasn't going to be 4-0, and Keane, I think, really struggled that day up against Villa back at the start of August. Obviously, I think the next game, Premier League game at home to Wolves, Branthwaite was back in and hasn't looked back since. So, although Keane did do well against Burnley and Fulham most recently, I just think, though, there's a lot of bad performances in there at a time when Everton really needed people to stand up and make themselves counted.
Are we doing Keane at the service here? Is he being played out of position? Is he not being played in his natural position as a centre forward?
Well, recent evidence suggests that is the case, wasn't it? The goal against Tottenham, the penalty against Fulham, the goal against Burnley. He looks a natural finish, doesn't he? But I just think there's been moments where obviously he's done very well, but I think there's always been moments where he struggles. Yeah. And I think when you look towards the back end of last season, when he was really struggling, it could have had a real detrimental effect on Everton if he'd have been, kept in the team moving forward.
Okay, so Michael Keane for Conor then. Mine, and it's, you can deem this as controversial, whatever way you want it. It's not Michael Keane, it's Amadou Onana. I suppose if you're going to look at it, is yours on the most disappointing player of the season? Is that how?
Yeah, disappoints at times, I think, but some of the contribution that they made should have done better, basically.
I think my pick for that, obviously, Onana, still comes under that. I just think underperformer, and I think it's all relevant, isn't it? I think it comes with expectations of what you expect, and doesn't just come in football. It's in life, or whether you're going to watch like a film or something like that. But Amadou Onana he's got the potential for all to see, and he's obviously still very young. I'm not disputing that, but for me, he just hasn't lived up to his expectation of what you wanted from him from when he's come in, and to top it off, he did that penalty against Fulham, which my thoughts on that. I was really disappointed in him.
But that's putting it quite mildly, Ian.
Well, yeah, it is, and I think as well.
You were raging.
I was fuming, and I'm not just picking on him because of that. I do think there should have been a lot more from Onana over the past 12 months.
You're still waiting for him to be that person, aren't you? Grabs the game by a scruff of the neck and takes control, and leaves a stamp on things. And I don't think we've really seen that enough, and that's why, on Monday's show when we talk about Onana go to Arsenal, obviously the links there.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's such a divisive kind of speculation, because for Arsenal they're saying, don't buy a midfielder, buy a bloody centre forward. We need to score goals.
Yeah.
And Everton fans are a bit torn, I think, because I think some of them were like, well, he's got real potential, but then others are like, well, yeah, but potential means nothing. We can get 60, 70 million for him. It might be the time to cash in because you might never fulfill that potential. So I know what you're saying coming from it on. I think sometimes he often flatters to deceive, doesn't he, a little bit? And I think it can be a little bit stop-start with him.
Yeah. And this is just disappointing in general because, I've never said this, but you've obviously seen comparisons from other pundits, comparing him to like Vieira and stuff like that. And I just think he's way off that. He's completely way off that.
I mean, that's not his fault, though.
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault that Roberto Martinez said he was like the next Patrick Vieira, which is what Roberto Martinez did say. That's not his fault.
That's absolutely fine. But he is technically in that Vieira style mode as a player.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You would expect him to be not just a defensive midfielder or attacking midfielder. You'd want that type of player to be a box to box. And I'm kind of giving him compliments here. I think he's got that in his locker. I just don't know. Maybe it's because he is too young that he's not that leader that he may become. And he's not like, it's a cliche, isn't it? But taking the games by the scruff of the neck, like sometimes he's too passive. I don't think there's anything wrong in how he passes the ball or what he does. He's got a lot of really good attributes, but sometimes he'll be asking for the ball, he'll receive it, and then he'll literally just pass it back to the same guy that he's passed it to. And I think that's, there's nothing wrong in doing that if you're under pressure, but sometimes these are just little things that I pick out in matches where you think that's so frustrating. You can do so much better.
Yeah.
And it's just disappointing because, I do feel like he is obviously going to leave Everton at some point in the next 18 months to 2 years, hopefully for a big fee. This is the model that the club have having to deal with at this moment in time. I don't think it's any secret that is the fact. So he's obviously going to leave, and I do think he'll probably go on to be a better player. He'll have better, inevitably better players around him, and we'll probably see him, whether it's with Arsenal or someone else. He's obviously going to go on to be successful. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh because he is young, and you don't just become a leader when you're young. You're obviously developing that with experience and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I'm going to stick with Onana on that one. So
that's a fair shout.
Michael Keane, Connor, Onana for me. Next one then. This is a positive one, so it'll be interesting to see what your one is. There's been a lot of ups and downs in 2023. Some shocking results, really good wins, but best match. Whether you've attended, whether you haven't attended, whether you've covered it, whether it's been away, just
I think there's probably two that I can't split. One is obviously Bournemouth on the last day of last season.
Okay.
Purely and simply because if we didn't win that game of football, we'd be playing the Sky Bet Championship now.
Yeah.
And you dread to think what position the club could possibly find themselves in if they'd have been relegated. And just the euphoria, I think, of the full time was going and knowing that Everton was safe and knowing that we could all head into the summer, not jovial, but fresh in the mind that we were away, and other clubs in the Championship, no respect to them, but it's very far away. We wasn't going to be in the Championship. I think the relief, it was quite telling, wasn't it, Bournemouth, because obviously the Palace game, there was a lot of euphoria.
Yeah.
Obviously people, celebrated and partied hard, I think it's safe to say.
More anger this time.
This time round, it was just about anything of like, well, thank God that's over, but it can never happen again. Like we said this last year, but can never happen again. This and people have got to pay the price for what obviously unfolded.
Yeah.
So I think Bournemouth is obviously one, and I'm gonna go with Brighton away.
Okay.
When they won 5-1, because performance that nobody, I don't care who you are, whether you're the most optimistic person who thinks they're going to win the lottery every time they put it on, no one saw that result coming. Perhaps we might have sneaked it 1-0. Some might have said we might sneak this 1-0.
Yeah.
No one saw us going to Brighton and winning 5-1 and being so emphatically dominant like we was. Although Jordan Pickford still have to make 3 great saves in 20 minutes in a 20-minute spell.
Was that in the second half?
So it wasn't very. It's quite surreal, isn't it? Because I was actually in the Echo office for that game, where obviously Joe Thomas and Chris Beasley were down there, and even at like 3-1, obviously we unfortunately work with some Liverpool supporters, I think it's safe to say, in this office. Not all on sports before people start jumping in, but people work on news and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, you're home and dry, and it's like, no, we're not home and dry just yet. I think it was only really when Dwight McNeil scored the 5th that I truly kind of relaxed and thought, geez, what a win this is, So yeah, I think obviously the euphoria and just the relief of Bournemouth, but yeah, I think performance of the season and best match was certainly Brighton away, because that was something that none of us seen coming, and ultimately kept us up, because I know everyone talks about the Bournemouth game, but that result put us in the position we were against Bournemouth. We just had to win to stay up. So they're my two.
Well, we hadn't, with the Brighton one, we hadn't won in like a month as well.
Yeah, we really struggled, hadn't we, to be fair? And it looked like if we were going to survive, we were going to be surviving by other people not being able to pick points up more than us picking points up.
Yeah, so it was kind of, obviously the result in itself, the 5 goals was a surprise, like you said. We could have picked up a win maybe, but Brighton were obviously in good form as well. Their manager, De Zerbi, was obviously being lauded as this fantastic coach because he'd taken Brighton onto kind of like the next level. Do you think with that they maybe underestimated Everton, the Brighton players, or is that not given enough credit to Dyson?
I just think Everton turned up, didn't they, with a game plan, got off to the perfect start, scoring inside, was it 30 seconds or something like that, and just didn't look back. I think perhaps maybe Brighton did. I know at the time as well, there's a few people at Brighton weren't saying that they were struggling with fatigue, they were tired, they were, they'd been a long season to take its toll type thing, and I think they knew that they already had European football by that point. So I think it was it was already kind of in that they were already a little bit maybe flip-flops on a little bit, just counting down the days into the season. But take that away from Everton, because Everton went to Wolves a couple of weeks later and made extremely hard work against the team who many have thought they had their flip-flops on in Wolves.
A 97 minutes or 99 minute
equaliser, yeah, and weren't great if we're being honest. So I think it does take away from Everton, but it was just an unbelievable performance that no one saw coming.
Before we get on to my best match, then Toffee Sai on YouTube has said best player. I'm going Tarkowski. Can you see where he would say that?
Yeah, consistency, isn't it? I think he obviously played every game, and obviously we're just looking at the calendar year, but 2022, 23, he played every game, Premier League game, which is some feat and no easy going. So yeah, I think he's been what you call a moral pro, hasn't he, since he come in. He gets the job done, gives us all, leaves nothing on the pitch, got leadership qualities, and if you can play every week in the Premier League, then you're certainly on for something.
Okay, so you've said best match, you've gone for 2, which will allow Brighton.
I put Brighton, to be fair, ahead of Bournemouth.
Brighton ahead of Bournemouth. That's fine. Well, there's more stuff and more questions that we're going to go, but there's also obviously favourite moments as well. But my best match of 2023, and before I say it, I'll kind of explain why, is because it was just more the wasn't because we'd won. It was, well, obviously it was because we'd won, but it was more the joy around the match and how we won the match. So I'm going to go for one of the most recent wins, Newcastle 3-0 at Goodison Park on the 7th of December. We'd obviously had the points deduction. We played United, but obviously got beat. Then we played Forest. Maybe people could say that was a little bit unexpected as well, that win. But then we go into the Newcastle game. They're not, although on a great run of form, they've still got a lot of good players. I know they've had players out injured, but I just felt, I was sat in the lower gardens for that game, and I just felt happy. It felt good. Even when we weren't winning, it was still 0-0, competitive game. I know Newcastle still had a couple of chances that maybe could have took the lead, but I just felt like this was going to be our night. And it's the first time in a long time where I think Everton have got a performance and a result at the same time. And it didn't necessarily mean anything to do with relegation. It was just a win that was great, and the atmosphere towards the end, and obviously Beto scored, and the goals that cemented the win. 3-0 against Newcastle. I don't think we, even with all Newcastle's issues that they had, I don't think we expected that, did we?
Yeah, no, and there's no love lost, is there, between the two sets of fan bases.
Which is, again, it's just weird. I don't understand why, but I think we've discussed this in the past, and it mainly comes down to Jordan Pickford
and social media. I think basically but yeah, I mean, I can understand why Newcastle, because Newcastle were in a moment where it was like, right, this is where Everton they're fighting. I think what made that great as well was they backed up in the Sunday against Chelsea.
Yes,
they beat Chelsea 2-0. Yeah. And also as well, I think it's worth pointing out for them, that around that time it was when Everton made the stand and put the fan support food banks logo on the screen.
Yeah.
Because obviously both Newcastle fans and Chelsea fans decided that they were going to sing poverty songs, which is very nice of them. And Everton took a stand that night. And I remember writing a few days after that game saying, after the Chelsea game, there's a lot to be proud about on Sunday, on the pitch. But the proudest moment Everton fans should have is what come off the pitch, because football, pales into insignificance in a lot of things in life. And, people, not just young children, grown adults, going hungry or having to visit food banks should not be celebrated and should not be used as a stick to beat other people with.
Yeah.
So it was just felt like that time, wasn't it, where it was like, to me, that felt like a club that was really united at the time. I don't think we'll be able to say that about Everton for a long time, where everyone was just kind of like, this is us now, and we're going to all go full throttle. Obviously, results haven't been great since then that week, but you certainly felt the spirit was there, and that spirit can go a long, long way, because I think when Goodison's united, it's a powerful, powerful force that can get over the line, and we've seen that in recent years, haven't we? Because you think of Palace and Bournemouth to an extent, the fans play a massive role in keeping Everton up. So, yeah, I think that was a big week, and I think Newcastle was like the crowning moment, because it was like, wow, that was like, where did that come from? But at the same time, we were also very, very good.
Yeah.
And, I think people took great pleasure in getting over a certain Mr. Anthony Gordon.
No, well, exactly. That was always the cherry on top of the cake. And I think, I didn't mention it there. You have mentioned it, the unified fan base after, what happened with the points deduction. We obviously had the disappointments of the United game, but then bounced back almost immediately with the Forest win, and then kept it going with a fantastic 3-0 win at Newcastle, against Newcastle, at Goodison. And just being there, knowing that every single fan in the ground was united, and we ended up winning emphatically at the end of the day. Fantastic 3 goals. Beto ends up scoring as well. Gets his first Premier League goal. It was just really kind of joyous time, really.
Yeah.
And I know I know things have kind of slowed down a little bit, but we did have 2 wins after that. But that's one of the happiest I've felt being an Evertonian in a long time. And I'm going to jump in, Connor, with, I feel like after talking about the best match, I don't really want to talk about the worst match, but I'm going to jump in before you. And this is stark contrast, really. So my worst match was the Goodison Park Newcastle 4-1 defeat on the 27th of April.
Yeah, that's mine as well.
Is that yours? So we could go through a lot. We could go through Southampton. We could go through Brighton, Fulham.
Wolves this season, Fulham this season.
There's a lot. Luton, I suppose, as well.
I didn't think they played that bad against Luton, no, to be honest. The second half, they ran out of ideas.
I missed the Luton game, so...
And went great, but certainly first 20 minutes, they would have been... The thing, we don't want to obviously talk about the negatives too, but the Newcastle one, certainly, that game, the 4-1 defeat, that was a night when I genuinely left Goodison thinking, it's the Championship now. Like, that is the final nail in Everton's coffin here for Premier League football. I think that was the night, wasn't it, when they brought the fans... welcome the coach back. They got the coach in, and it felt like everyone was going above and beyond, and that little bit of kind of camaraderie and trying to get that spirit back going where it served the club so well the season before. But yeah, I think it was just absolutely kind of a hammer blow, wasn't it? And he was so... Don't get me wrong, I still think things could have been different that night at Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal just on the stroke of half time, being given by VAR. I still think it was incredibly tight, but the way they collapsed in the second half and offered little fight and little hope for those leaving, it looked like the Championship beckoned. So yeah, that's my worst game as well. But I think the less said about that, the better, because it's a nightmare that none of us ever want to revisit. We'll quickly move on then from the worst match, because we have got a lot of positive things to speak about, even though there hasn't been many in 2023. But we have kind of got favourite moments and worst moments, which obviously that could be your match as well. But I've kind of broken it down, and I've got 2 separate things anyway to go with that. So, moving on from worst match, then we've both picked Newcastle 4-1 away, 4-1 at home on the 27th of April. So this is an interesting one, definitely a positive one. Surprise player of the season. I've kind of picked 2, but I know which one I'll probably go with for the first one. So if you want to go first. Decore is a surprise as well. Because you thought that he was a bounce back the way he did after being snubbed and frozen out by Frank Lampard. We did say that earlier, didn't we? Yeah, Decore for me. Just the way he bounced back and what he done. I don't think any of us thought he had that in him, and he's gone from strength to strength. I could repeat everything I said to the first question, so I'll spare the listeners a rerun, but yeah, Decore for me. Okay, fair enough. So Decore features twice in Connor's 2023 moments of the season. So I've got 2. I'm going to say the first is James Tarkowski,
and second is Vitaly Mykolenko. So Tarkowski, the reason I've picked him, and it's interesting because obviously we've got a listener and a watcher there who said Tarkowski as his best player. I think, for me, I don't think he's been the best, but I think he's definitely been probably the most improved. And for me, it's surprising in a sense that there was a couple of times, probably at the back end of last season, and certainly since Tarkowski's come to the club, that I just felt he was very much a Burnley player, and he wasn't good enough for Everton Football Club. I think he's, as a defender, I think he's probably solid, but he was also extremely prone to mistakes that led to goals. And there was a couple of times that I felt that happened. And there was a couple of times where I did get, I can't exactly pinpoint exactly which ones, but I did get very frustrated with him, where he'd made mistakes that definitely led to a goal or two. But certainly since the start of the season, it's been a massive turnaround, and it surprised me. But I'm going to put it down to his partnership with, I'm not discrediting Tarkowski in any way, but his partnership with Branthwaite has just flourished, and I think it's been a perfect partnership for both of them, to be honest. And I think it's proved that with the amount of clean sheets that we've kept, his performances, Branthwaite's performances as well. So number one, surprise player of the season, Tarkowski. Second, just as I mentioned, Vitaly Mykolenko. I feel like he's always had the talent there, but I feel under Lampard he struggled a little bit, but he's come back into the fore after a couple of injuries as well, and he's shown that he is, a quality fullback, certainly in the defensive mode. We obviously know he's had issues off the pitch. His country's at war. Family issues with regards to that. So it can't have been easy. But I'm genuinely just kind of made up for him that he's fought his way back into the team, and not just fought his way back into the team, but the team have benefited him being in there, basically.
No, I think they're very valid conclusions. I still just think Decore for what he done.
I'm not going to argue with you. We all love Decore. Okay, so I'll go with this one first. So, favourite moment. You've obviously picked this as your favourite match. My favourite moment of the season is the final whistle at home to Bournemouth.
Yeah, I agree. Just the relief.
Yeah.
Just like the relief. I mean, it's a double fold, this one, because you, as a fan, and I'm an Everton fan, don't want to see your team get relegated. No. You also don't want to be the reporter who works in local paper when the team gets relegated. So the double whammy of not being in that unique position of I covered Everton when they were relegated from the Premier League, and dropped out the top flight for the first time, and just the
70 years,
just the sheer relief, that they were staying up and they were safe, and it was done. You know what I mean? And the sleepless nights it ended. I mean, it's mad, isn't it? I mean, that was only 7 months ago, was it? That.
God, it feels like years.
I mean, I remember, it's quite ironic, but I remember I was in here on the Saturday actually working and leaving. I'm being very nervous, let's just say, about what was to come of Goodison, because I was under under any sex. It was going to be a given that they were just going to sit up and steamroll Bournemouth.
Bournemouth played well, I thought as well.
So I remember having to go and have a few pints after work, let's just say, to settle the nerves, and I think it was just relief, wasn't it, more than anything? I just think it can't be topped. We've got some good wins in that, but that win was just huge, but huge times 1,000 for what it meant and what it was actually going to do for us.
And the 10 minutes of injury time added on was obviously not good as well.
I still think time stood still when that lad had the volley from the edge of the bottom. I mean, I should know his name. That's really poor on my part, but which Pickford saved. I still think time stood still at that moment, to be honest with you. And I think that was a 30 seconds that felt about 3 hours in which Goodison, I think, held its breath as one, because everyone was a bit because you always know, don't you, whenever you score like that, the other team's going to get a chance or be given a chance, have a chance.
Yeah, and he did.
And when he had that, obviously, when he unleashes it, you think he struck that well, and everyone. I just remember being in the press box and everyone's head kind of moving, as if to say, "Oh, is this the moment?" But obviously, Pickford come up trumps like he does so often. But that was just a surreal afternoon, I think, to go through it again for the second season running. But just the relief when that final whistle went, to be able to walk home. Because I don't live too far from Goodison, to be able to walk home safe and knowledge. I think we're going to be a Premier League club and everything was done, and we were going to crack on us. Hopefully, there's be a bit of a reset.
And just on that chance, because that chance wasn't if Bournemouth score, then Everton get a draw and we get a point. You don't get this often in football, but effectively, if that we're winning 1-0, but effectively, if that ball goes in the back of the net, it's a loss, isn't it?
We're going down because the draw wasn't good enough. Because I think actually by that point, Leicester have finished. I think that Leicester had beaten West Ham.
They were waiting, weren't they?
They were waiting for Everton.
I think there was suggestion from the King Power that they thought Bournemouth had scored and fans were celebrating.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I think that was caught on camera. To be honest,
I know there was a moment, wasn't he, where I think the West Ham fans started celebrating when Decore scored because obviously they were there.
Yeah.
So obviously that all went on, but I just remember, to be fair, one other thing as well. I remember in the press box there was a guy sat in front of me. I don't know who he worked for, or and he had Sky Go on, and I just remember looking. I was occasionally look over to see how it was going. So obviously, be watching Everton. I just remember like Leicester breaking and thinking, "Oh, that looks dangerous." And next thing, Leicester scored just before half time. And I remember like going in half time thinking, "Because we need to find something big here. We need to dig deep." Because I didn't think once Leicester went ahead, you're thinking they're probably not going to slip up here, so I've got to get a win. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, I think it was very, very interesting afternoon. But one that I think we should all just be severely grateful ended in an Everton result, and we're still watching the best players in the world on a weekly basis and not fighting for our lives to get back in the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll briefly touch on this because we've kind of touched on the worst match, but worst moments. I'll go first on this one. So you touched upon it against the Newcastle when we got beat against Newcastle 4-1. You thought that's it now, we're done. We're going in the going to the Championship. I think we all felt that after Newcastle, but I felt my worst moment was losing to Fulham 3-1 at Goodison Park, 15th of April, because then we. Obviously this is within hindsight, I didn't know at the time, but we didn't actually win again until Brighton after that. So that was like a good month. I think it was the 8th of May, just under a month. But at the time, I felt our record against Fulham, regardless of whether we're a poor team or not, was outstanding. I don't think we'd lost against Fulham. So I thought, if we can't beat Fulham, I know they've got a good manager and a good team, but that was, that wasn't the be all and end all. I just thought, we are going down here if we can't beat Fulham, and we deserve to go down. Still a long way to go, but I just felt, when that final whistle went against Fulham, certainly because they scored first, didn't they? And then we got back into it, and then I thought, come on.
Morpay missed 3 glorious chances, 2 before half time, 1 just after half time.
Yeah, I do remember that as well. So,
and I think that was the day where everyone lost patience with him, wasn't it? And was just a bit like, this is going to end in one way, and it's it's relegation if we can't score. And also, that was one of them games, to be fair, where I felt genuinely sorry for Sean Dyche afterwards, because he was just kind of sat there like, we had 4 gilt-edged chances and didn't take any of them, and what more could I do type thing, you know what I mean? What more can you do, you know what I mean? What more can you do? But yeah, I thought we were a little bit dead and buried at that point, but still the worst moment for me is still Newcastle, because that was one where I thought, get a win tonight, take us into May.
Yeah.
You've got to pick up maybe 5 points in May, be enough. And I think the way in which we fell apart, it's just like there's no fighting spirit here, and all hope's kind of lost, and the fans can't do no more.
Yeah.
And I don't. At that was night, it was where I thought even the fans can't pull them over the line this time round. And unfortunately, we did get over the line, but it didn't look that way when we were all leaving Goodison Park and coming in here the next morning talking about it.
We'll leave worst moments in the past then. Best goal then? Is Decore going to make it a hat trick for you of best, or has he got someone else in mind for the best goal of 2023?
There's something about Beto's goal against Newcastle that was just magic. The move, the fact he scored it. He went running around like a lunatic after he scored it, which I thought was great, because
and VAR nearly ruined
it, but it went Everton's way for the first time. I felt like forever, you know what I mean?
They checked it for a long time.
They did, yeah.
Tried the best.
Yeah, but we somehow got over the line with that one. So I think Decore is obviously up there, because obviously, like I say, the goal was priceless, for being honest, from what it's done. But Beto's, because it just was a great smile, wasn't it? And
just made up, genuinely happy.
Yeah. It put the icing on the cake, didn't it? VAR going our way.
Yeah.
Great team move.
Yeah.
Just a team move that probably dispels a few, myths that Sean Dyche just lumps it forward to a big man.
Yeah.
It's a great bit of play. But yeah, I obviously the Corey goal will always be one that everyone will look back on in years to come. But yeah, certainly Beto's was just nice moments. And sometimes you like nice moments, don't you?
Well, we've had a couple of good goals, to be fair, this season. So I'm going to go a little bit different, and it wasn't necessarily a goal that we needed to win or anything like that, but it did come in the 90-odd minutes, and it was against Tottenham. 3rd of April, which resulted in a 1-1 draw. It was Michael Keane.
Michael Keane?
His prowess as a centre-forward, a goal-scoring centre-forward, the technique. If you remember, I was sat right at in the lower Gladys, and I just watched it as I knew as soon as it left his foot, it was going in the back of the net. My angle from it, I could just see it was going in the back of the net. And obviously it was last-minute equaliser, so obviously the crowd went crazy. But I want to give Michael Keane a little bit of credit there. I thought that was, for me, like as a goal comes, for me that was Everton's best goal of the season. Or sorry, best goal of 2023. There's a couple of other stickouts. Coleman's maybe against Leeds, where he's got it on the wing.
Yes.
Remember that one? Whether he meant it or not, I don't know. I think
he said he did. He did. I spoke to he said he did. What were the ones? Jack Harrison against Bournemouth.
Yeah, that was on my list to be honest as well. That was a very good goal. Yeah. So there's been a couple of good ones. Obviously, the core race against Bournemouth. You know, that's probably, you know, you're going to say it's going to be in your top 3 just because of what it meant. But yeah, there's definitely been a couple of good goals this season. Okay, moving on then. Moving on to best opposition player that you watched either at Goodison Park or away, really.
Away.
It doesn't have to be away.
I was really impressed when I done away games, to be fair. 2 stand out. I thought Gundogan's performance in the 3-0 when we got lost to City
he was just stole man
to the back was just magical. Like, it was absolutely like it was worth going just to watch him alone that afternoon. I think he scored a free kick, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, he did,
set one up. Don't know what he took on his knee, didn't he? Flicked it over. Yeah. That was just like magical. Like, and that was like clearly a player who's got unbelievable ability, playing the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
And I'm never not impressed when I see Declan Rice play.
Okay.
I just think he's got that engine, that powerhouse. I thought him and Odegaard were really good when they played. Come in September, not obviously the first time February, but when it come in September, I thought they were good. But yeah, I just thought that Gundogan performance was just magical, wasn't it? It was like, I think I remember saying actually, it's one of the national lads in the media afterwards. I was like, God, that was like spellbound, that wasn't it? Like, he was just like, he made the pitch just look so big. He was just so comfortable on the ball.
Yeah,
you know, it was just magical. And I think I still think there was a bit of a truce that day. And once they went 3-0 up, we went 5 at the back to not concede anymore, because I think we were feeling that goal difference was going to take a hammer.
Yeah,
and I think we just maybe perhaps agreed that if we don't kick Gundogan around the pitch, City won't score again, because he was just superb, wasn't it? And I think that was like, I've seen a lot actually before about Gundogan in the runs that game. Everyone's saying like, he's playing off these, it's all talk about Haaland and De Bruyne and Stones, but Gundogan's just like off the scale at the minute, how well he's doing, etc.
Yeah.
And then when you watch him that afternoon, you just thought like, wow, like what a player. And obviously, I think Man City is certainly for the worst about him, because it was just sensational, wasn't it? And there's not often, I don't think, people come to Goodison and dominate a game like that or have that effect on people. I think, you know, you look back in recent years since I've been going, probably the Invincibles when they come in the opening day of the 2004-5 season, and they were 4-0 and they just passed us off 4-1. Sorry, and they just passed us off the park and looked, you know, streets ahead of us. But there's not been a lot of teams who I think have come to Goodison and kind of stamped their authority on the game. But that day he just was on another level to anyone else, and I think it's quite testament that he was on another level to all of his City teammates when you think of how high their benchmark is. So yeah, Gundogan for me, I think it was just magical.
Well, we've got a snap there. That's exactly what I was going to say. I felt that that game, the build up and the narrative to that game was obviously, it wasn't just centered around Everton and the relegation, because there was obviously a title race. And I think a lot of people thought...
treble, wasn't it? At that point, City were well and truly on for the treble, weren't they?
But I think a lot of people thought this was the one where City would slip up. And, you know, they just completely ignored what the pundits thought and what was going to happen. Everton just couldn't even get close to them. I think the expectation from the fans were there as well. The Everton fans thought that we were going to at least get a point. We were going to try and do something here. City would slip up, but, you know, they played us off the park, and Gundogan was the main, you know, person for that, and ended up scoring the 2 goals. So yeah, that was also my best opposition player. Obviously, it was a 3-0 defeat on a Sunday afternoon. I remember it well, unfortunately. So Before we move on,
I think anyone who was there should remember that performance that day, because when you look back in years to come, certainly when we leave Goodison, I think if someone says to me, what was the best performance you've seen from a position of Goodison, a player of Goodison, Gundogan's against Everton back in May, will be right up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Toffee Size also said, surprise player for the 2023, probably, obviously looking towards the start of the season and, into the New Year's, it being Branthwaite.
Yeah, I mean...
Surprised, though? Is it a surprise that he's done what he's
obviously, done? Took the mantle from the esteemed David Prentice, used to be at this parish, obviously now doing other things, of selecting an Everpool 11 for the 2023 calendar year just before New Year's Day a few weeks ago. Branthwaite didn't get included because he only started playing at the end of August.
Yeah, I agree with this. I agree with this.
Tarkowski obviously got the nod over him alongside Van Dijk. But like I said in that, there's if he stays at Everton moving forward, he will be a very strong argument. He'll be the first name on the team sheet in years to come. So yeah, I think the big thing with Branthwaite is, I think a lot of people knew he had potential and he had the chance to do something, become a really good player. It's how effortless he's made that transition from kind of like squad fringe to just being a regular starter. And the way he's going, and I was obviously allowed to talk about transfers and Real Madrid being in for him. The way he's going, you wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on that playing against the Euros with England in the summer, because I think his performances have been so good that Gareth Southgate's not going to be in a position to ignore him. And I think certainly if he keep going the way he is now, he's going to give Gareth Southgate a serious decision to make. And that's, I think, the highest compliment you can pay someone, isn't it, at that level? So yeah, I think ultimately it is a surprise how well he's done. And I think this is the other thing with Branthwaite, isn't it? Like what we see now, we just come to expect him. It's the norm. But really, you should be looking, I think, about that is like, making Premier League defending look effortless. You think of all the defensive issues Everton have had in recent seasons, it's not easy.
No, absolutely. Okay, then. I'm going to go first on this one because I feel like you're going to say the same. So, best goal scored by an opposition player. I'm going to say Garnacho's goal against, obviously, us for Man United.
Yeah, and I would also say, was it Odegaard's against Arsenal? For Arsenal in the 1-0 in September?
I can't remember it.
When he kind of slid in and slide-footed into the top corner at the bottom.
I do remember it, yeah.
I thought that was a good goal. Garnacho's was just like one of them ones where you're thinking, where's that come from, wasn't it? Like, that was no one foreseen that coming.
Killed the game dead.
Yeah. I also think, to be fair, and again, I'm not in a love-in with him by any stretch, but Gundogan's first, because somebody took it on his chest knee and then flicked over his head. I thought that was pretty special. I understand Garnacho, but I'd probably go Gundogan just because it was the all around what you saw that day. But Garnacho's one of them goals, isn't that in 20 years' time, when we're old and wrinkly and watching Premier League years for this season, that goal will be shown over and over and over again, won't it? Because it was just so out the blue, so special. And, you could have had 4 Jordan Pickfords in that goal and it wouldn't have saved it.
I just think it's going to win goal of the season. It's already won for me.
I think it'll take some beating.
Just out of interest and totally off topic from Everton, what was the better goal, Garnacho or Bamford's? I think for Leeds.
Garnacho.
Yeah.
Because the way he hung in the air.
Yeah, a lot of people saying Bamford's goal was better, but I disagreed with that. I thought Bamford's goal was absolutely fantastic. Like, goal. Not like saying anything bad about it. I think Garnacho's just, for the type of goal that it is, it's just Garnacho's goal.
Yeah, I just think Garnacho, I think the way he hung in the air, the way he took the surprise of it. And it's also one of them goals as well. That, like, with all due respect, lads, I think if he tries it 10 times again, it'll never come off.
No, yeah. So I think he did try it, didn't he? Against in the Europa League, one of the Europa League games. I'm sure he did.
I mean, it's very typical, isn't it, that you done it once at Goodison and it absolutely flew in the top corner of the net. But I just think Garnacho, because I think it's a goal that we'll see for years to come. But my personal favourite was Gundogan, because I think it just capped off a stellar performance there.
Okay. We'll kind of start bringing it to a close, but I do want to kind of discuss some of the landmark moments of the year. But before we get onto that, just rate Everton's 2023 out of 10. I'm not expecting any high scores whatsoever.
6.
6? I mean,
they stayed up.
Okay.
And they've shown signs of improvement.
Late rally.
Yeah, I think you can see what Sean Dyche's trying to do. I think Sean Dyche's problem is that what we all feed a little bit is that he hasn't got a massive squad. And if injuries and suspensions start taking a toll, which they have done in recent weeks, they're going to be fatigued and they're going to look a little bit run ragged. And that's exactly what happened at Wolves on the day before New Year's Eve. They look ran raggers and look like it generally looked like a lot of them had played the 5 games in December up to that point. But I think it was quite refreshing that we've played. We look back at more. I wouldn't say we were at the levels we were against Newcastle or Forest, against Palace, but we certainly looked a little bit more kind of fresh and a little bit more unfatigued. So I think a 6. I think the biggest they achieved. Sean Dyche achieved the ultimate aim when he come in. It was to keep the club in the Premier League. I still don't think Everton should have been fighting on the final day. I still think they had enough talent in that squad to have been clear of danger a lot earlier. And I think if we perhaps hadn't been so stubborn on certain issues, things might have been different. Certainly not giving Yerry Mina a game a little bit earlier is one that sticks to mind.
Yeah.
But they did find a way to stay up, which is the most important thing. And then I think, obviously, we had a rough start to the season. It was 6 games. We went 6 Premier League games. We went without a win. 5 Premier League games without a win. And obviously, a dismal night in Doncaster was saved by Beto and Danjuma. I remember I was at that game with Joe Thomas, and about 55 minutes in, the two of us were looking at each other going, oh my God, we're back on like disaster, Everton crisis mode, because you're thinking if they get dumped out here, this has been dreadful. But they found a way to win, and I think that was the big thing. They found a way to win that night. They obviously then backed up for a point at Sheffield United, which they probably should have got 2 or 3 that day. But then obviously, beating Brentford away, beating Villa away, and then the home form, and just the way they've managed to small changes. And like I say, you can see what Sean Dyche was trying to do. He wants a team, and it's not going to be a coaching manual. I don't think what he's trying to do. It's not, he's not going to be held as like Marcel Bielsa or Pep Guardiola, but
high performance,
a bit of organisation, a bit of sweat on the shirt can go a long way. And I don't think we've seen that much in recent years from Everton. So I say 6. I think, like I say, they achieved their ultimate goal of last season, which was to stay up, and they've shown promise this season that, obviously, if it wasn't for the 10 points, they wouldn't be nervous looking over their shoulder.
No, absolutely. I'm going to go with 1 below you did. I'm going to go with a 5, just because I don't think there's very, if no positives to take from, the early months of the season. I think it was just absolute catastrophe. Obviously, Lampard was sacked, Dyche came in, and then we survived relegation by the skin of our teeth. Obviously, we've had just said it there, but kind of we've had a rally towards the latter stages of the season. Certainly a poor start has resulted in a couple of really good wins, to the point where we've obviously gone on to win a couple of games in a row. I think it's stupid saying this, because we've done it, but if we didn't have maybe those 4 wins in a row, then I think, depending on how it could have gone, you'd be looking at like, well, even the latter stages of the season have been a little bit poor, but those 4 wins since the points deduction have been absolutely massive. Took us out the relegation zone, but like you've already mentioned it there, like you said, we've had wins littered in and around that as well. West Ham, Brentford, the cup game against Villa, Burnley at home.
The 2 black parts in recent weeks are the Carabao Cup exit.
Yeah, it's been disappointing,
which was kind of probably set us on this road of what they've been on recently, and Wolves. But apart from that, Tottenham, we should have won, let alone got a point. Let's face it, we had a perfectly good goal disallowed. I'm still not convinced that was a foul in any, certainly not a foul to be brought back the way it was. Obviously, Danjuma hits the bar, it bounces down, could bounce in, bounces out, misses the chance, paid the price for probably a slow 10 minutes when they scored twice. And then, we played City, where I think, for being honest, we give City a game, certainly in the first half. Second half, we show shades of why they win 15, 16 matches on the spin and go and win all the big trophies in May. You got talents of Phil Foden and Jack Grealish and, Rodri. They just showed their class in the end of the tolls. But again, Calvert-Lewin puts it in to make it 2-2 with 10 minutes to go. It could have been a different outcome, couldn't it? But instead he misses. Everton guilty giving away. And even that night, the handball, I think, is open for debate as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really sure what they want him to do. So I think there's obviously been shades of disappointment, but I think there's enough to suggest that there's brighter things on the horizon. It's going to be a little bit better moving forward.
And we will move forward, but just finally then to finish off, Connor, 2023 hasn't been short of controversy. Just to kind of sum up 2023, we've had a managerial sacking, a managerial appointment. We've survived relegation. We've had interest, which it looks like it's going to be interesting. A new takeover, 777 partners look like they're going to take over the club. That we know that hasn't happened yet, but obviously that's dominated some of the talk over the past couple of weeks and months. Points deduction, keywords, that has absolutely dominated everything. And then, like I said, we've had that end of year rally. It hasn't been short of incidents, Everton 2023.
No, it was absolutely wild, wasn't it? If I'm being honest, it was absolutely wild. There was seemingly something every other week that was going on. That was like, that might happen like once every 15, 20 years for the clubs, was happening all the time at Everton. I think the appointment of Sean Dyche, Frank Lampard had to be sacked in the end, didn't he, by the time they got to West Ham. The defeat to West Ham left the club's hierarchy at no point. I think the appointment of Sean Dyche was crucial because he was someone who come in, knew what was required to get the job done. Although I still think it would have been quite interesting on what Bielsa would have done if they'd been able to lure him to Goodison. Yeah. That maybe would have been its own chapter itself. You don't know, do you?
He probably would have left. Though,
obviously, we've touched on the surviving relegation. Obviously, the off-the-pitch stuff's been quite dominant, hasn't it? I think the 7-7 stuff still wrangles on. Probably hoping for some sort of outcome, I think, in the next week or two. Yeah. With that, it's a classic case, isn't it? Of a lot remains to be seen in terms of what's going to happen. Obviously, then on top of that, you've got the 10-point deduction, which literally I think came from nowhere and left everyone up. I mean, I was actually out. I was off that day and I was out. And the first I heard was my phone buzzed, and it was the WhatsApp notification from the desk, sending the story out. And it's like, Everton handed 10-point punishment, but I was like, what? And then obviously read it, went on Twitter, and obviously I made in mind, I was just stood on I'd been in the shop and was walking back in the street, just stood there oh my word, what on earth is all all this? And obviously that's all still to come, by the way. 2020, we say 2023 has been wild. Yeah. 2024, I hope is not as wild, but there's still a lot to be, a lot to come. Obviously, you got the appeal hearing, 777 takeover being completed or not being completed. Managerial,
new finances being submitted as well,
transfers, the accounts for last season. There's a lot. But I do think as well it was one of the great aspects of 2023, and that was how quick that new stadium shot up on the waterfront. Yeah. And I think there's been a lot made of that over the years in terms of it'll never happen. You'll never see, it's all talk. But now when you drive past, which, I do quite a bit, because obviously I go that way from home to home sometimes from the office, you can't help but think, wow. And I think when you think this time, last month, in a year's time, Everton, in December of this year, Everton possibly could have the keys for that. And we're prepared to play there, to play there and move from Goodison Park. So that is very exciting, because it'd be sad to leave Goodison, but I just think what an arena it's going to be, and I think it's a long overdue move that the club need to make to get into probably the present day.
Well, I don't think there's any better way to finish the podcast than thoughts about the new stadium and the positives.
The only thing that's been keeping people going, hasn't it? Really? Let's face it, for a club at one point that was struggling to get good news out there, that has been the one good news. And you think of, was it the one man with the cone that time who was down there? It's come a long way since then, hasn't it? As we sit here now.
It certainly has. So we're obviously going to look forward to 2024. Our next podcast will be Thursday this week. I think it's booked in for Thursday, obviously ahead of Aston Villa at Goodison Park. So we're going to be live on Thursday. I'm not too sure who's going to be in the pod. I think you're down for it, aren't you?
I think I am, yeah. I think myself, Chris and John, is it? I think.
Yeah. So it'll be
the full squad.
Yeah, going to be live on YouTube and Facebook for that one. So Connor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I've been Ian Croll, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.